After last week's strategy focused video, I wanted to get back to some Dynasty trade talk today. Players to buy, players to sell as you're trying to make the fantasy playoffs and position your Dynasty teams for long-term success. So we're going to jump right into this one today. My name is Paul. This is Pure Potential. If you like today's video, make sure to subscribe, like, leave a comment. Let's get into it. Real quick, I just wanted to apologize for ghosting on the Q&A live stream that was supposed to happen on Saturday, and then it was supposed to happen on Monday. Ended up picking up a stomach bug over the weekend, kept me out of commission until pretty much this morning. So hopefully I can make that up soon. I would like to go live soon and answer some questions, but that one just didn't end up working out. As far as today's video is concerned, it's going to follow the same type of format as the last time I did this 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to have some different categories of players. We're going to have a couple of sell highs, a buy low player, a buy high, and then I actually have a bonus player as well that I think you might want to look at trading after this coming week. And as I discuss player value today, just know that my default is going to be 12 team Superflex, PPR, tight end premium. So that's my mindset when I talk about a player being overvalued or undervalued or how the market views them. And so if you're in a different type of league, you just have to be able to mentally adjust how you would evaluate the player based on your league settings. So let's get into our first player here, which is Baker Mayfield, who I think is a great sell high candidate right now in Dynasty. He's currently the QB2 in points per game, and he has undoubtedly been playing absolutely lights out. He has been awesome in fantasy. He's been an incredible return on investment for people that bought into him last year when he was valued at late second round value, even less than that in years prior. So no doubt he's been an incredible asset for those that roster him. But I do think that his value is starting to rise to a pretty unrealistic point. He's the 32nd overall player now on Fantasy Calc. He's ahead of guys like Drake May, Dak Prescott, Devon Achane, Trey McBride. Now, that's not to say if you roster Baker Mayfield, you will 100% be able to trade him straight up for those players. But I do think the fact that he's ranked so high does indicate that people are putting a lot of stock into his performance so far, and people are moving big names to get Baker Mayfield in Superflex formats. Now, he just lost Chris Godwin for the year. He's losing Mike Evans for multiple weeks. So his top two pass catchers, that's incredibly thin after that on the depth chart. It's rookie Jalen McMillan, it's Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer. I mean, there is no legitimate wide receiver one. His best receiving options right now are Cade Otton and Rachaad White. So I do think that's a pretty big hit to kind of the weekly expectation and maybe the weekly ceiling for this passing game. But even without those injuries, I still think that this price is just too high. What we have to realize about Baker's performance so far is that he is running extremely hot on touchdown passes. He has a 7.7% touchdown rate. That's just not sustainable. I don't care how good he is, even if he's moved into like the top 10 discussion amongst NFL quarterbacks, I'm open to that conversation. It doesn't matter. This 7.7% touchdown rate will not maintain. Just as a point of reference, Patrick Mahomes has a 6% career touchdown rate. In other words, 6% of Mahomes' pass attempts turn into touchdowns. For Baker Mayfield right now, that is 7.7%. That is one of the highest marks in the league right now. I think it's only trailing Jordan Love and Lamar Jackson. So he's not going to continue to throw touchdowns at that high of a rate, especially now with Godwin and Evans out of the fold. So I think now is a good time to try to cash out on Baker Mayfield. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. I said where he's being ranked right now in the same zone as Drake May, as Dak Prescott, Devon Achane, Trey McBride, Garrett Wilson. These are all players I would add to Baker Mayfield to acquire. You could try to go up from Baker into like a Kyler Murray, into Jordan Love, Kenneth Walker, Saquon Barkley, Drake London. There's a lot of players in this range that I just think in the long run are going to be more impactful for your dynasty team than Baker Mayfield, who I do think most likely moving forward is more in that low end QB1 range, more like what we see from guys like Jared Goff, what we've seen from Kirk Cousins throughout his career. That's really who I think Baker is as a quarterback. But if we look at some of the recently completed trades from the Fantasy Calc trade database, this can give you even more ideas. And these are all trades that were completed either today or yesterday. So just starting near the top, you have a straight swap for Baker to Dak Prescott. I'm just taking Dak Prescott. We have a much longer track record of his success in the league. He's currently attempting more passes per game than Baker is on the Buccaneers. They're close enough in age where I'm just going to defer to the guy with a longer track record of success, who I have a higher prior on talent-wise. Though I will admit that they've gotten a lot closer this year than I certainly would have expected before. And then we also have deals involving first round picks, like Baker straight up for a 2025 first, Baker for Will Levis and a first. There's other deals down towards the bottom. That's just going to depend on where the first is. I do think late first value is fair for Baker. Like if you have a need at quarterback, you can definitely trade a late first for him. But I do think cashing out for a first is also reasonable as well. Like if you have an extra quarterback or you are a rebuilding team, cashing out for a first that's potentially landing in the 107, 108 range, that's totally reasonable to me. And then you have some deals that are just kind of ridiculous, like Baker and a second for 2 first round picks. You have to take 2 first round picks there. You know, I don't know what to tell you. So I think there's a lot of ways you can play with him, but I think now is the best time to move on. Now, my other sell high player this week is Tank Bigsby, running back for the Jaguars. This past week with Travis Etienne out of the lineup, he doubled up his career high in carries. He had 26 attempts against the Patriots in a blowout win. He racked up 118 yards and 2 touchdowns. He played 66% of the offensive snaps. But here's the thing about Tank Bigsby. The week prior, in that blowout loss to the Bears, he played just 27% of the snaps. Dearness Johnson was working ahead of him for most of the game. Tank Bigsby does not get targets. He does not play on third downs. He is not trusted in negative game scripts. And so because of all these limiting factors, even though he has looked really good on the ground this year, his value has just jumped the shark. Okay, I posted a poll on Twitter on October 20th, right around the time that London game was ending. It was like deep in the fourth quarter. And I just asked, would you rather have Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby in Dynasty? 57% of people picked Tank Bigsby over Travis Etienne. That is deranged behavior. Travis Etienne is still the starter there when he's healthy. He's going to play in passing situations. They picked up his 5th-year option last year. He's owed something like $10 million next season. And he is a good running back. Like, I think there's this recent narrative, this recency bias that Travis Etienne isn't good. That's just not true in my opinion. He's just dealt with some nagging injuries recently, and Tank Bigsby has been the better rusher between the two this year, but Etienne's still the more versatile player. He's still the more trusted player. What I expect to happen when Etienne gets healthy is that he and Bigsby pretty much split the rushing work down the middle, and then Etienne picks up those third downs. He gets the scripted passing stuff. So that leaves Tank Bigsby for this season and next season, at best, just splitting rushing work with no hope of, working the passing game or anything like that. So the upside there is seriously capped. He's just not a player that I see myself starting with confidence in a managed format. Like, as long as Etienne is out, you can start him, but you're still just hoping that he can get in the end zone. And when Etienne's back, it's going to be very hit or miss. Some weeks he might break off a long run. Other weeks it's going to be totally nothing. Looking at these recent Fantasy Calc trades, I'm taking the other side in almost all of these. Tank Bigsby and a third for Hawkinson and a fourth. I mean, that is so easily the Hawkinson side. Tank Bigsby for 3 2025 thirds. That one's probably pretty fair. Moving down a little bit further, Tank Bigsby and a third for Ramondre Stevenson and a fourth. I would so much rather have Ramondre Stevenson. Tank Bigsby for a second. Fine with me. Romeo Doubs and Tank Bigsby for Jalen Waddle. What are we doing here? Give me Jalen Waddle easily. Tank Bigsby for Adonai Mitchell and a second. I'm going to take the package there. So basically you're looking for like second round value, but I'm totally comfortable moving him for mid to late second round value, whether that's another player, whether you're pivoting to a running back with a more clear role like a Tony Pollard or a Ramondre Stevenson, a Brian Robinson, someone in that range, whether you're pivoting to one of the rookie running backs, somebody like Braylon Allen or Bucky Irving. Either way, I'm just looking to get out from Bigsby because I think his value right now is pretty artificial. All right, now let's talk about a buy low player, maybe kind of a boring player, but nonetheless, somebody who does tend to get the job done, or at least has over the past few years, and that's Jakobi Meyers, wide receiver for the Vegas Raiders. He's never been an exciting name in fantasy, but he has been quietly reliable throughout his career. So far this season, he's sitting at 22% targets per out run, 1.63 yards per out run. That's not great. It's not terrible either. If we look at his most recent 3 games, weeks 3 to 5, before he left with an ankle injury that's cost him his last 2, he had 9 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets in those 3 games. And Devontae Adams only played in week 3, and then he missed the other 2. So clearly Myers was heating up. He was taking on a larger role in the offense in those 3 games. And now you look at what this Raiders passing game is without Devontae Adams in the mix. Obviously, you've got Brock Bowers. He is the alpha. He is the main target earner in that offense. But then you have Trey Tucker, DJ Turner, Harrison Bryant, Alexander Madison out of the backfield. I mean, it's just absolutely brutal. They need another legitimate receiver, and that's what Jakobi Meyers is. He is a competent weapon. So Jacoby Myers did return to practice today. Hopefully he'll be back in the lineup this week. And I'm expecting him to take on like a 22 to 25% target share in this offense, which is going to give him a decent floor. It's going to make him a very startable player in like start 10, start 11 formats. He's not a guy you're ever going to be super excited for, but I think if you did lose a Chris Godwin or you lost a Brandon Ayuk or something, and you're scrambling for a replacement, somebody that can at least give you base competency to get you through to the fantasy playoffs, I think you could do a lot worse than Jacoby Myers. And the best thing about him is that his value is so depressed. His value is so low right now. And I think you can get away with sending a very late second for him. That's fine on paper. But I think there's a lot of ways to get a trade done without even having to send a second round pick. I think in a lot of cases, you can send like a third round pick and a bench player or something, but let's go ahead and look at these fantasy calc trades and see what he's being dealt for right now. All right, so right away, I'm seeing several Myers for second type of trades, 2027 second, a 2025 second, 2025 second, Myers and a third for a second and a third, Jacoby Myers for Hollywood Brown. I think that's a good deal you could make. Jacoby Myers for Rico Dowdle, another good option if you are in need of a wide receiver, maybe you have an extra running back to spare. Myers for a couple of thirds, another Myers for a second, Myers for Aaron Rodgers. Again, that's fine. Like if you have 4 quarterbacks, I really don't care. Like Rodgers isn't really giving you that much upside. He's a total unknown after this season. You could definitely pivot to Jacoby Myers. And then at the bottom here, Myers for a third and 2/5. So I'm seeing a lot of favorable deals here where you can add him to your team for very little cost, and he'll probably give you 12 to 14 points per game the rest of the way. And then moving over to my buy high player, it's going to be David Njoku, tight end for the Cleveland Browns. I'm calling him a buy high because he's coming off of a big game. So his value is going to be higher today than it would have been a week ago or 2 weeks ago. But that being said, he was really low in the rankings, like irresponsibly low on things like Fantasy Calc coming into this week. And so I suspect that the market's not fully going to react to this to the level that I think that they should. Because with Njoku, he was the tight end 1 in fantasy over the second half of last season. He dealt with an injury to start this season, missed a couple of games. In week 7, he goes completely nuts, 14 targets, 10 receptions, 76 yards, and a touchdown in his first game without Amari Cooper. So at this point, I'm considering David Njoku the alpha of the Browns passing game. It's not Jerry Jeudy. It's not Cedric Tillman. It's not Elijah Moore. Njoku is going to be, I think, the first read in this offense. And now Jameis Winston has been named the starter, which is absolutely massive because while he might not be a good quarterback in the way that NFL teams want him to be, he is good for his pass catchers in fantasy because he will just chuck it with reckless abandon, and any interceptions that he throws are just going to lead to more pass attempts overall. So I'm very interested in buying Njoku all the way up to like early second round prices because I think rest of the season, he's a pretty clear top 5 tight end option. In fact, I would struggle to rank him behind anybody other than George Kittle and Brock Bowers. So really great outlook the rest of the way. Could be a true difference maker for you. And he's not old. I think he's only 29 years old. So it's not like you're getting a 1-year rental. This is a guy who should be useful in multiple years to come. And then taking a look at the trades here, we have a couple of weird ones at the top. I don't know who's trading David Njoku for Bryce Young. If you can do that, definitely should. But then you have some other ones that are much more reasonable. David Njoku for Jake Ferguson. I think that one's fair for both sides. David Njoku for Zach Ertz and a third. That's a great deal for Njoku. Rashad White in a third. I'm definitely paying that. Chris Godwin, I think that's a fine pivot as well. If you lost Chris Godwin, if you can trade him for David Njoku, get that production at a different position. That works for me. Going down a little bit further, Pat Freiermuth in a third. Yeah, definitely moving that. A second and a fourth. Comfortable moving that. So most of these trades, I'm happy to send that package away for the David Njoku side. He looks like a good buy candidate right now. And I just want to close things out today with one more sell, but with the caveat that I'm not actually looking to sell this week. This is a little bit of a look ahead, and is someone I would be looking to sell after week 8, and that's Jackson Smith-Njigba. I have expressed some concern about JSN this offseason when I made a video about year 2 breakouts because he just didn't really check the boxes that I'm typically looking for with rookies in terms of PFF receiving grade, his peripheral numbers, targets per outrun, yards per outrun. And this season, he's posting an even lower yards per outrun than his rookie year. He's at 1.20. That's really, really bad. He's only got 10.9 PPR points per game. So I'm just not happy with what I'm seeing from JSN, and I'm starting to get worried about him, you know, as a player who still carries a good amount of value in Dynasty. But with DK Metcalf set to miss a couple of weeks, we could see a little sell window open up for JSN. Because I do think like he's capable of having good games. We saw it in week 2. If the offensive game plan calls for it and they want to kind of build things around JSN, he can have a big game. But I just think that based on what I've seen so far, he's not really ever going to be that consistent high-end fantasy producer. And I've seen a lot of excuses that like, oh, eventually Tyler Lockett will be out of there and then it's going to be wheels up for JSN. And like if a 32-year-old Tyler Lockett is really stopping you from unlocking your true ceiling, I think it's just not that high of a ceiling. So we could be coming up on that last opportunity to really cash out on him for first round value. If you can get a future first round pick, 2026, 2027, I don't really care what year, I'd be taking it, because based on what I've seen, I don't really think he's going to have the type of ceiling to make me regret that trade. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, guys. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you enjoy my content, please hit the subscribe button. It really goes a long way. And if you want even more Dynasty content from me, consider hitting the join button as well and becoming a YouTube member. You can get access to my Dynasty rankings updated weekly and my weekly members only live streams. Either way, I'll be back soon with another Dynasty video. Hopefully I'll see you then.